Captain Alex Walker sat in the cockpit of the spacecraft, his hands gripping the controls as he navigated through the vast stretches of space. His mission was clear: chart unknown territories, gather data on distant planets, and return home to Earth. It was supposed to be a routine journey. There were no signs, no warnings, that anything could go wrong. The stars shone brightly outside the thick glass window, and the hum of the ship's engine was steady. Alex felt a sense of calm, despite the fact that he was light years from home. But then, everything changed. Without any prior warning, a sudden, violent shudder ran through the spacecraft. The alarms blared loudly, and Alex's hands instinctively tightened on the control panel. His heart raced. Something was wrong. He quickly glanced at the ship's display. It flickered, and then went black. Panic surged through him, but Alex forced himself to focus. His training kicked in, his mind moving through the emergency procedures he had learned countless times. He tried to regain control of the ship, but the more he tried, the worse the situation became. Another massive shudder rattled the spacecraft. He could feel it tearing apart around him. The walls groaned as if the entire ship was on the verge of collapse. The ship's control system was down, and the emergency thrusters barely responded. Alex's vision blurred as he struggled to keep the craft steady. A wave of dizziness overtook him, and before he could react, everything went dark. When he awoke, it was not in the comfort of his spacecraft. The first thing he noticed was the cold, hard ground beneath him. His head throbbed with pain and his vision was blurry. Slowly, he lifted his hand to his forehead, feeling the dried blood that had pooled there. He was alive, but only just. As his senses began to return, Alex noticed something strange. The air smelled different, fresher, almost like wildflowers, yet unfamiliar. He could hear soft murmurs around him, low voices that didn't sound human. Panic surged once again, but he forced himself to stay still, trying to make sense of the situation. He attempted to push himself up, but pain shot through his side. He gritted his teeth, trying to ignore it, and forced his body to sit up. What he saw left him breathless. Surrounding him were tall, powerful-looking women, their eyes full of curiosity. They were all staring at him, and their faces were a mixture of awe, confusion, and wariness. The women were unlike anyone Alex had ever seen. They were tall, much taller than the average human woman, with strong, athletic builds. Their skin was smooth and unblemished, and their eyes were a striking shade of violet, a color he had never encountered before. They wore simple clothing, made from what appeared to be plant fibers, woven together with intricate patterns. Alex blinked, trying to make sense of the situation. Was this a dream? Had the crash somehow knocked him out and caused him to hallucinate? But no, the pain in his side, the dry blood on his forehead, the cold ground beneath him. This was all real. "Are you?" one of the women began, her voice soft yet firm. The others remained silent, watching him closely. Alex couldn't form words at first. His throat was dry, his mind still racing. He swallowed, forcing the words out. "Where am I? What happened?"
"Who are you?" His voice cracked, but he didn't care. He needed answers.
The woman who had spoken, her hair long and dark, tilted her head slightly, as if she was trying to understand his words. She looked over her shoulder at the others, then back at him.
"You crashed," she said simply, her accent unfamiliar but clear enough for him to understand. "In the ship." She gestured vaguely in the direction of the wreckage, but Alex's eyes were too clouded to see it.
His heart skipped a beat as reality set in. He was stranded. There was no way home. He had no idea where he was, or who these women were, and there was no way of contacting Earth. The fear was overwhelming, but he pushed it down. He had to focus. He had to survive. He looked around, trying to find something familiar. There were no signs of advanced technology, no structures, no vehicles. The landscape stretched out before him, a vast expanse of green fields dotted with trees, mountains rising in the distance. It looked almost Earth-like, yet there was an unfamiliar quality to it. The sky was a strange shade of blue, with two suns hanging low on the horizon.
"I need to leave,"
Alex muttered under his breath. He pushed himself to stand, ignoring the pain in his side, but as soon as he stood, the women closed in on him, their eyes filled with suspicion and uncertainty. The tall woman, who had spoken earlier, stepped forward. "You cannot leave," she said firmly, her voice growing more serious. "You are not from here. You are not like us." I'm human," Alex said, his voice strained. "I'm from Earth. I'm a pilot. I was on a mission, and I crashed." He was babbling, but he didn't know what else to say. The women exchanged looks, some of them whispering to each other. The leader of the group, the one who had spoken, stepped closer to Alex. Her violet eyes studied him carefully, as though weighing the situation. "I don't understand," she said, her voice softer now. "What is this Earth you speak of?" She sounded genuinely curious, and Alex felt a knot form in his stomach. These women had never known men before, let alone heard of Earth. He was in a completely alien world, with no way of getting back. "Please, I just need help," Alex said, his voice now trembling. "I don't know what happened to my ship. I don't know where I am." The woman's expression softened slightly, but she still looked cautious. "You are not the first to crash here," she said quietly. "But you are the first we have seen who is not like us." Alex's mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle. How had he ended up on a planet populated only by women? And why had they never seen a man before? The questions were endless, but the most pressing one was survival. He needed to figure out how to communicate with them, how to earn their trust, and how to fix his ship, if that was even possible. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "What's your name?" he asked the woman, desperate for some form of connection. "I am Lyra," she replied. "I am the one who found you." "Lyra," Alex repeated, the name strange yet comforting. "I'm Alex." Lyra nodded slowly, but there was no warmth in her gaze. She was studying him carefully, as if trying to determine whether he posed a threat. And in that moment, Alex knew that he would have to prove he was no enemy, no matter what it took. "Will you help me?" he asked quietly, though he wasn't sure if he was asking for his survival, his escape, or just some form of hope. Lyra's expression remained unreadable.
"We will see," she said, her tone neutral, before she motioned for the others to approach. Alex's heart pounded in his chest.
He was on an unknown planet, surrounded by women who had never known men. And his future here, if there was even a future, remained uncertain. The journey ahead would be unlike anything he had ever imagined. Alex had never felt more alone in his life. The air on this strange world smelled fresh, but it wasn't like Earth. It wasn't home. He was surrounded by women who had never known men, a fact that felt as bizarre as it did isolating. They spoke in an unfamiliar language, their voices soft but powerful, and their eyes were full of curiosity and something else, something he couldn't quite place. Fear? Caution? Or was it something deeper? He couldn't be sure. Lyra, the woman who had found him, was still watching him carefully, though she no longer looked at him with suspicion. Instead, there was an air of curiosity in her violet eyes, and though Alex couldn't understand the language, her tone was clear enough. She was trying to figure him out. The others had drawn back, giving him space, but also keeping their distance. They moved about, their expressions serious as they went to inspect the wreckage of his ship. Alex had asked if they could help him repair it, but Lyra had only shaken her head. "The ship is beyond repair," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "It is not something we can fix here." He had been trained to fix spacecraft, to salvage and repair, but here, on a strange alien world, there was no way to even begin. No tools, no knowledge of this world's resources, and no way to get back to Earth. He had no choice but to follow them. As they led him deeper into their settlement, the landscape around him was beautiful, in a wild and untamed way. The rolling fields, the towering trees, the towering mountains in the distance. It was unlike any place Alex had ever seen. He couldn't shake the feeling that this world was both ancient and untouched, as though the women who lived here were the last survivors of something long forgotten. The settlement they led him to was a series of open spaces, with dwellings made from natural materials that blended seamlessly into the environment. There were no heavy metal structures, no bustling city life. Instead, it was calm, almost peaceful, but there was also an underlying tension. The women, though strong and capable, carried themselves with a quiet unease as they moved from one place to another. They brought him to a small circular dwelling, a structure woven from branches and covered with large leaves. Inside, the space was warm, with a large fire in the center that gave off a comforting glow. Alex was led to a cushion near the fire, where Lyra motioned for him to sit. He sat down carefully, still feeling the aches from the crash. He looked around, trying to find something familiar, but everything was so foreign. The way they lived, the way they moved, it was all different from anything he had ever known. After a moment, Lyra sat across from him. She studied him intently, her eyes still filled with questions. Alex opened his mouth, ready to ask more questions, but he stopped. What was the point? He had no idea where to start. How could he explain Earth or humanity to a people who had never known men? How could he ask for help when they didn't even understand what he needed? Instead, he took a deep breath and tried to speak slowly. "What is this place?" he asked, his voice still hoarse. Lyra tilted her head slightly, clearly thinking about the question before she responded. "This is our home. We have lived here for generations. Our people are the last of our kind."
Alex blinked. "The last of your kind?" he repeated.
"What happened to everyone else?" Lyra's gaze shifted away from him, and for a moment, Alex thought he saw a flicker of sadness in her eyes. But when she spoke, her voice was steady, as though she had long since accepted whatever had happened. "We do not know. Long ago there were others. But they left, and we remain." Alex could feel the weight of her words. This was a society of survivors, a small, isolated group of women, living in a world that had seen the passing of something much larger.
"You are alone?" he asked.
She nodded.
"Alone, but not without purpose. We have our own ways."
"We live in peace."
"Why did you bring me here?"
Alex asked, suddenly feeling self-conscious. He had expected to be thrown into a holding cell or cast out into the wilderness. He was a stranger, a male, in a society that had never known men. Yet here he was, sitting in the warmth of their fire, receiving their attention. Lyra didn't answer immediately. She stood and moved to the side, where a small wooden chest rested on the floor. She opened it, revealing various objects that Alex couldn't recognize. Some of them were beautiful, intricate designs, while others appeared to be tools or weapons. She picked up a long curved blade, the metal gleaming in the firelight. It was unlike anything Alex had seen before. The hilt was wrapped in some kind of plant fiber, and the blade itself was decorated with strange symbols. Lyra turned to him, her expression serious.
"We have never seen a man like you. Our world has been built without the need for men."
"But you—" She paused, her eyes searching his face. "You are not like us, and yet you are." Alex could feel his heart race. He wasn't sure what she meant by that, but the weight of her words felt heavy.
"What are you saying?"
he asked. Lyra slowly set the blade down and walked toward him. She stood close, her violet eyes locked on his.
"You are an enigma," she said quietly.
"We do not know what to make of you. You come from another place, another world. You bring something we have never known." She reached up, gently brushing her fingers against his arm, as though feeling the strength of his body. "But there is something in you, something different, something that can help us." Alex couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. The touch of her fingers sent a strange feeling through him. He had never felt more out of place, more uncertain in his entire life. "Help you?" he asked, his voice shaky.
"What could I possibly do to help you?"
Lyra didn't answer right away. Instead, She motioned to the outside.
"There are things in this world that we cannot face alone," she said, her tone now almost resigned.
"Creatures that threaten our safety. Forces we do not understand." "And our people?" She trailed off, her voice dropping. "We have lost so much."
We need help, even if we do not fully understand what you are.
Alex's mind was racing. What did she mean by creatures? What kind of threats did they face? He couldn't make sense of it. He wasn't here to fight alien monsters or protect anyone. He was just a pilot, stranded on a planet that wasn't his own. He opened his mouth to speak, but Lyra held up a hand to silence him. Her expression was grave. "You may not understand," she said, "but you are not the first to crash here, and you will not be the last." The words hit Alex like a punch to the gut. What did she mean? There had been others. Who were they? And why had they all ended up here, on this strange world, surrounded by women who had never known men? Before he could ask another question, Lyra stood up, her face set with determination. "You will stay here for now," she said.
"We have much to discuss, but for now, you are safe. The rest will come in time."
With that, she turned and left the room, leaving Alex to sit in the quiet, uncertain of what would happen next. Alex was left alone with his thoughts, the fire flickering softly in front of him. He had no idea what his next move should be. But one thing was clear. He had been stranded on a world that was not his own. And the women who lived here, who had never known men, had no idea what to make of him. But Alex wasn't ready to give up. He had always been a fighter. If there was a way to survive, to fix his ship, to get home, he would find it, no matter what it took. Alex lay awake long into the night, the warmth of the fire casting flickering shadows on the walls of his small room. The gentle sound of wind rustling the leaves outside was almost soothing, but it did little to ease the storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. Every hour that passed made it clearer that he was stuck on this strange world, with no way of returning home. He had no choice but to rely on the women who had found him. Yet the more he learned, the more confusing everything became. He had met Lyra and the others, who all seemed curious about him, but also cautious. They treated him with a strange mixture of reverence and distance. They had no experience with men, no understanding of their existence beyond a distant myth, and yet he was here, in their world, a living, breathing reminder of something they had never known. It had been days since the crash, and Alex still had not been able to get a clear answer from Lyra or anyone else. What did she mean by, "We are not the first to crash here"? And why was she so insistent that he was somehow different, important even, to their survival? He sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. He missed his ship. He missed the certainty of space, the cold, mechanical hum of the spacecraft as it glided through the stars. He missed Earth. The faces of his team members flashed in his mind, people he might never see again. The thought of being alone, stranded on a planet he didn't understand, was almost unbearable. But more than that, he had the unsettling feeling that something far bigger was at play. He had to figure it out. The next morning, Lyra came to check on him, as she had every day since his arrival. She was always calm, always measured. But today, her expression seemed more serious than usual. Her violet eyes locked with his as she entered the room.
"You need to come with me,"
she said, her voice firm but not unkind. Alex stood up, his muscles stiff from the long hours of lying in one position. He nodded, not asking any questions. He had learned that questioning her too much often led to more confusion. If Lyra wanted him to follow her, he would follow. At this point, he had no other choice. They walked together through the settlement, the other women watching them from the edges of their homes. The world around him was strikingly beautiful. The natural landscapes were unlike anything Alex had ever seen. Towering trees with wide fan-like leaves, lush green fields that stretched as far as the eye could see. There was a wildness to it, but also an undeniable peace. He could feel the history of the place in his bones, It was as if the land itself had been untouched for centuries. As they approached the outskirts of the settlement, Alex saw a large structure. It looked like a tower, built from the same materials as the homes, but much taller and more fortified. It was different, standing proud against the skyline, like a silent sentinel. A group of women stood near the base waiting for them. Lyra stopped and turned to Alex. "This is where we keep our knowledge. It is the heart of our society." Alex raised an eyebrow. Knowledge? He had no idea what she meant, but he didn't want to question her. He followed her up the winding path toward the base of the tower. As they climbed higher, the air became cooler, the wind sharper. Alex couldn't help but notice that the structure seemed to be constructed with a deep understanding of the land around it. The building blended with its environment, almost as if it were part of the planet itself. When they reached the top, Lyra stopped and turned to him.
"This is where we keep our most valuable artifacts, knowledge passed down from the time before."
Alex's curiosity piqued. He had always been an explorer, trained to investigate the unknown. He wanted to know more, to understand the history of this place. But before he could ask, Lyra placed a hand on his arm, her touch surprising in its warmth. "Do not take anything lightly," she said softly. "What you see here is not just history."
It is a warning.
The word echoed in Alex's mind. What did she mean? Lyra gestured to the room ahead. It was large, with walls lined by shelves filled with strange artifacts, objects Alex couldn't even begin to identify. There were small statues, intricate carvings, and piles of scrolls, all neatly arranged in a way that suggested a deep reverence for the past. "Here we keep the records of all who have come before us," Lyra explained. "It is said that our ancestors built this world, that they had great power and wisdom, but they were betrayed by those they trusted, and in their betrayal, they were lost." Alex stepped forward, his eyes scanning the shelves. One object caught his eye, a small metallic disc. It was unlike anything else in the room. It gleamed in the low light, its surface etched with strange symbols. It looked almost familiar, but where had he seen something like it before? Before he could reach for it, Lyra's voice stopped him. "That is not for you," she said, her tone sharp. "Not yet. You must understand more before touching it." Alex hesitated, but then nodded. He wanted to ask more questions, but something in Lyra's voice told him not to press it. Instead, he turned back to the artifacts. He had a feeling that the answers to his questions were somewhere in this room, but the truth was elusive, like a shadow that darted just out of reach. As they stood there in silence, Lyra finally spoke again. "We were once a great civilization," she said quietly. "We had everything. Technology, knowledge, power. But it all crumbled. It is said that the men came, bringing destruction in their wake. We were not prepared for them, and after they left, we were forced to rebuild, to live without the things that once made us strong." He had heard about male societies back on Earth, but he couldn't understand how a world like this could have been so advanced and yet so isolated. "What happened to the men?" he asked.
Where did they go? Lyra's face tightened. They were taken.
"They disappeared without a trace. Our ancestors tried to find them, but they were gone." "Taken?" Alex felt a chill run through him. The men of this world, whoever they had been, were gone. But what did that mean for him? Why was he here? Was he supposed to take their place? Or was he just another lost soul, drifting through space and time, without a purpose? "I'm not like them," Alex said softly, more to himself than to Lyra. "No," she replied, her voice softer now.
You are not, and that is why you are here. Alex looked at her, confused once more.
"What do you mean?" She turned away from him, her gaze shifting toward the horizon. "You will see soon enough. The things that brought you here, the crash, the ship, none of it is by chance. There is a reason you are here, Alex. You are part of something much bigger than you realize." Alex didn't understand. But he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to get any more answers standing here, lost in the mystery of this world. He had to find out for himself. As they descended from the tower, Alex felt a renewed sense of determination. The more he learned, the more questions he had. But he wasn't going to stop, not now. He couldn't afford to, not when his only hope for survival depended on understanding this world, its history, and the people who lived here. And maybe, just maybe, he would find a way to return home. But first he had to face the truth, whatever it was, and make a choice that would shape the rest of his life. The days passed slowly for Alex, each one blending into the next, like the endless sky that stretched above the world. He spent most of his time with Lyra, trying to understand more about the women's society, their way of life, and the strange world he had crash-landed on. He had learned a lot, yet there was still so much that remained a mystery. The women's settlement was peaceful, but there was an undeniable tension in the air, a sense that something was about to change. Alex could feel it, and so could Lyra. She had been more distant lately, her eyes constantly scanning the horizon, as if expecting something, or someone, to appear. He didn't know what it was, but he knew it wasn't good. One evening, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Lyra came to him, with a serious look on her face. "Alex," she said, her voice low and urgent, "there is something we must do. You are the only one who can help us now." Alex looked at her, concern spreading through him. "What do you mean?"
"What's happening?" Lyra's violet eyes seemed to darken, and she glanced over her shoulder, as if ensuring no one was listening.
"There are creatures, dangerous ones, that live beyond the borders of our settlement. We have always managed to keep them at bay. But lately, they have been growing bolder."
"Our people are not prepared to fight them, and we need your help."
"Alex!" Heart raced. "Creatures? What kind of creatures could these women, who had built their world with such care, be afraid of?" "What kind of creatures?" he asked, his voice steady, though he felt a knot form in his stomach.
"Predators," Lyra said, her voice heavy with fear. "They are not like any animal we know."
"They are clever, strong, and they have been hunting us." Alex frowned, his mind racing. "Why now? Why have they started attacking your settlement?" Lyra paused before answering, her gaze distant. "We do not know, but we suspect that it is because of you." Alex blinked. "Me? Why would they care about me?" Lyra's eyes met his, and there was a flicker of something. Regret? Fear? "Your presence here is not an accident. The men who came before you, the ones who vanished, they were not the first to visit this world. There have been others. And the creatures, the predators, they have been watching. They know that you are different, that you come from a world far beyond ours." Alex took a step back, his mind spinning. What was she saying? How could these creatures know about him? And what did she mean by the men who came before? Was there a connection between him and these predators? "We need you to help us fight back," Lyra continued, her voice now pleading. "We cannot do this without you." Alex's mind raced, but he knew he had no choice. He had come to care for these women, and they were right. They were not prepared to defend themselves against whatever was out there. He wasn't a warrior, but he had survived his own fair share of dangerous situations. And if they needed him, he couldn't turn his back on them. "All right," he said, his voice firm. "Whoa!" Lyra nodded, relief flashing in her eyes. "Follow me." She led him to the edge of the settlement, where a small group of women was gathered. They were armed with strange weapons, tools that Alex couldn't immediately recognize. They were bows, but the arrows were tipped with metal shards, and some of the women carried blades, similar to the one Lyra had shown him earlier. We must move quickly, Lyra said. The creatures are getting closer. They set off through the dense forest that surrounded the settlement. The trees here were unlike any Alex had ever seen, their trunks thick and gnarled, their branches sprawling out like the arms of giant beings. The air was thick with the scent of earth and plant life, and the distant calls of unknown animals echoed through the trees. As they walked, Lyra filled him in on what little they knew about the predators.
They come from the caves in the mountains, she said.
They live in the shadows, rarely seen but always present.
Some say they were created by the same forces that built this world, creatures that are part beast, part something else. We have tried to fight them before, but our weapons are not strong enough. Alex could feel the weight of her words. He had no idea what kind of creatures they were facing, but he could see the fear in the women's eyes. They were strong, capable, but something had changed. They were no longer certain of their place in the world. And now, with Alex's arrival, they were more vulnerable than ever. They reached a small clearing, and the group stopped. Lyra motioned for Alex to follow her to a nearby rock where a large map was spread out. It was a crude drawing, but it gave Alex some sense of the geography of the area. The predators had been coming from the mountains to the north, moving closer to the settlement with each passing day. Lyra pointed to a small cluster of trees on the map. "This is where they will attack tonight," she said. "We have to stop them before they reach the village." Alex looked at the map, trying to make sense of it. He didn't know the terrain, but he knew one thing. He couldn't let these women face whatever was coming, alone. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. Lyra's eyes locked onto his. "We need to draw them out."
We need to use you as bait. Alex's heart skipped a beat.
"Bait?" "Yes," Lyra said, her voice steady. "The creatures are drawn to your presence. They are watching you, and we need to use that to our advantage." Alex wasn't sure what to make of that. It sounded risky, dangerous even. But he understood why Lyra wanted to do it. If these creatures were hunting him, if they were somehow tied to his arrival on this world, then using him as bait might be their best chance to get rid of them once and for all.
"I'll do it," Alex said, his voice resolute.
Lyra looked at him for a long moment, and Alex could see the weight of the decision in her eyes. She didn't want to risk his life, but she had no other choice. She nodded. "We'll set the trap, but you must trust us, stay close to us, and we'll keep you safe." Alex nodded, knowing there was no turning back now. They had a plan, and it was their only shot at survival. The night came quickly, and the air grew colder as the sun dipped below the horizon. The women moved silently through the forest, their steps careful and measured.
Alex felt the weight of his role as bait, but he kept his mind focused.
He couldn't afford to hesitate. The creatures were out there, and if he wasn't careful, this could all go horribly wrong. They reached the clearing where the trap was set. Alex stood in the center, his heart pounding in his chest. The women spread out, hiding in the shadows, waiting for the creatures to approach. He could feel the eyes of the predators on him, just beyond the trees, watching and waiting. Minutes passed like hours. The tension was unbearable. Alex's breath came in shallow gasps as he waited for the first sign of movement. And then, just as he thought he couldn't stand it any longer, he heard it. A low growl echoed from the trees. The creatures were here.